and let's give them one last final round of applause for all their efforts. And in acknowledgement of your hard work and being accepted into this showcase, we have gift bags to give you all, but we'll hand those out at the end. We have a little bit of time while the judges tally their results. So in the meantime, I'd like to pose one last question to each one of you. I think it would make sense to go in the same speaking order. So we'll start with you again, Benji. I know that you mentioned that you were a campaign volunteer. Should we expect to see you running for any type of political office someday?
Not if my mom has anything to do with it. But I would like to be involved in a political capacity of some sort, preferably maybe as a communications director or a press secretary, maybe doing more of the behind-the-scenes political work rather than being the front man.
Okay, very cool. Sean, sorry for messing up your name earlier.
That's all right.
So you talked obviously mainly about needle exchange programs, but are there any other effective HIV and AIDS prevention measures that you know of besides needle exchange programs?
When I was looking into research in terms of how pervasive needle abuse essentially contributes to HIV rates, I was really kind of shocked by the statistic that the overwhelming HIV transmission method is through sexual transmission. And what struck me as the most difficult part of that is that we know exactly how to prevent that. We know that you can use condoms. The issue is that people aren't doing it, even though we have initiatives through Planned Parenthood to provide these free condoms. People aren't doing it because it's a behavior issue. And so it's one of those things where you have the one transmission method, which is kind of nebulous and difficult to pin down and prevent, which is the sexual transmission, which made the needle exchange option for the other transmission seem like such an obvious solution, because that is a program where people do change their behavior because it benefits them to use clean needles. There's no detriment to using clean needles, whereas a lot of people choose not to use condoms for their own reasons.
Thank you. Fatima, I know that you mentioned a little bit that you attribute poetry and early poetry studies to you being a successful person and student. I know that you're an honor student. Do you attribute poetry to how well you've done in school thus far?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess starting out early on with the love for language and the power language has and the power words have themselves, I knew that coming into GW pre-med and a poli-sci major, had I known about the medical humanities program, I might have still been pre-med, but I didn't want to give up words and working with words and analyzing texts. And so, yeah, it's a skill that's paid off.
Thank you. Morgan, great name first off. But it works with both genders, clearly. So I don't doubt the detriments that you mentioned to the music business that music streaming has, but what do you think that the future holds, because we do know that the world's becoming more and more digitally driven?
That is a very complicated question, and it's something that I cannot answer, and I don't think anyone else can answer. Spotify is definitely the future of music. Streaming is definitely the future of music, whether we like it or not. So I think that there are some methods that haven't been invented yet for artists to make more money. Radio is becoming obsolete. CDs have become almost obsolete. Back in the 90s, they accounted for over 80% of an artist's total revenue, and now they account for maybe less than 10%. So it's definitely really hard to pinpoint the future of music, but streaming websites definitely are. As far as making money is concerned, I think we're all going to have to step up our game and pitch in any way we can, whether that's buying music or going to live performances.
Thank you. And lastly, Erica. I'm guilty of watching shows like 16 and Pregnant and Teen Mom, and I think they've become very, very popular and very prevalent on TV. So I was wondering if you think that those shows are helpful or more detrimental to preventing teen pregnancy.
You know, when those shows were first rising in popularity, there was a lot of debate over that, and a lot of people thought, oh no, kids are gonna see these behaviors and want to emulate these characters. But I mean, I'm pretty sure we've all watched these, and it's not a glamorous portrayal, you know? And they actually did studies following up after these shows premiered, and there was a study by the National Bureau of Economics that found that in the 18 months following one of the seasons of 16 and Pregnant, they contributed the decrease in unplanned parenthood, about 5.7% of that, they contributed to that show. That was about a third of the overall decrease. And they found that since the 90s, unplanned teen pregnancy has decreased about 2.5% every year. And since 2010, 16 and pregnant per year in 2009, that rate has spiked to 7.5%. So if anything, I think it's showing kids how scary it can be to be a parent.
Excellent. It seems like Katrina and our chief judge need a little bit more time, so unless there's any more final questions from our audience members, I have a ton of questions on the back burner. But does anyone have any last questions? Okay. All right, let's start again with you, Benji. I recently read an article that the recently re-elected Rahm Emanuel, that he spent a $22.8 million in his campaign, and his opponent only spent about $4.6 million. So that goes right around what you were saying in your speech. Do you really think that money decides who wins political elections?
Well, I'm from Chicago, so I was following this race pretty closely. But I do think that with all the money that Ron raised, he was able to build a much more effective organization. Was able to run more ads and get his message across. Chuy Garcia had a powerful message. He was, connecting with a lot of people on the left, but he just didn't have the same organizational structures that Ron had, so he wasn't quite able to connect with as many voters that he needed to.
Okay, fair enough. Sean, this might be a little bit of a reach, but I was wondering just about the legalization of marijuana and kind of the new climate of decriminalization of drugs in general, and how you feel that might affect your topic, if at all.
I think while they're separate topics, they kind of share the theme of stigma and how stigma can be lessened about things that are public health concerns, which only helps to essentially alleviate the negative effects. I think, as Erica said, if you're more well-informed and you aren't afraid to talk about these kind of icky topics, it can help you to more directly confront them. So I think in terms of, especially as states begin to recognize potential medical benefits of marijuana, that helps to put more money into studies, which might render marijuana a very helpful medicine for people who might need it. Whereas if you kept the stigma around it as a drug, as an illegal drug, which is very high up in our schedule of drugs at the moment on a federal level, you basically preclude any of that progress being made. And I think it kind of is the same train of thinking. If you start to look at something objectively in terms of what can we see actually helps people, as opposed to that's a drug and therefore I don't want to discuss it, it will have only positive effects as we learn more.
Thank you. Fatima, I know that, in second grade you were writing poetry then, but do you have any plans to expand your poetic horizons possibly in the future?
I am trying to get my ice cream sonnet published. I don't know how well that's going to go. It's a good release when I'm stressed out to just write a couplet or something. So I'll stick with it, but probably not professionally.
Morgan, back to you. You talked a little bit about the correlation. I'm wondering about the correlation between, some people say that art museums should be free because you shouldn't have to pay to look at history or beautiful artwork. Do you see any correlation in the context of your topic? Should we have to pay to listen to music that could be deemed historical?
Well, I think that a lot of times that museums exhibit historical artifacts that aren't created by living people. Yes, they're curated by living people, but this is a much more regulated structure, whereas artists all have to contribute in their own way to make the music, and they have to, they have to cover many costs, from recording to touring to booking, and these costs need to be covered somehow. And so, yeah, I think there's a correlation. Of course, nowadays nobody wants to pay for music because music is so readily available. But in order for artists to further themselves and to make music, they need to make money. And so it's not in a way like museums where you can just have artifacts and art that people have created already It's more of a fluctuating industry.
Thank you. And last but not least, again, Erica, I was wondering if you think there's anything, us as audience members and young people, what can we do to empower people that are younger than us?
I think that we can do is if you have younger siblings or you are close with any teenagers, and to talk to them and let them know they have someone to talk to and ask questions about sex, and just open a dialogue there. It's something big anyone who has a young person in their life can do, and maybe start at a younger age than you think, because a lot of sex education is focused on high school age students, even when it's available. But the fact of the matter is that the story I told you about my friend that happened at the beginning of our freshman year in high school, and that's what you see in a lot of places, especially inner city schools like Washington, D.C. And so starting that conversation at a younger age is very valuable as well. There's also, if you're still at school and many of you are still attending GW, there's programs like Peer Health Exchange you can get involved in, and you go, you teach health education, and for freshmen in high school at a DC public school, it doesn't have the funding to fund those programs.
Well, thank you all for all your thoughtful and informative answers and for putting up with me pounding you with questions. I think a decision has been made, so I'm going to invite Katrina back up onto the stage. Thank you all one more time, and one last round of applause for all of you.
Nobody was disqualified for time or anything like that. So I'm going to just announce the second place winner was Morgan McKee. Congratulations. And the first place winner of the 4th Oral Advocacy Showcase and Competition is Erica Halverson. Our amazing judges for helping us with this event, to all of the people who work behind the scenes to help us, to all of you for coming, and once again to all of our amazing presenters.